Hello everyone, Ariam here, and today we are going to have a very special episode of Dinosaur Days that focuses on a fictional dinosaur instead of a real one. I think I'll throw these special episodes in every now and then just to keep myself from burning out by changing the pace a little bit, and there are a ton of cool dinosaur-esque fictional creatures in media that we can focus on, like the hybrids from the Jurassic World franchise especially. However, we're going to start with something a little more grotesque, you could say. We're going to start with the mad sauropod from Gennedy Tartakovsky's animated series PRIMAL. At the moment, PRIMAL only has 2 seasons, and it seems like the story has wrapped up. And the mad sauropod was only present for a single episode. But this episode was so impactful that people have been talking about it ever since. There are plenty of really in-depth, really detailed video essays on YouTube about this episode, so if you like what you see here and you kind of like the ideas that I'm spouting out and you want it in more detail, I'll try to link a few of those below. The episode opens with a peaceful herd of sauropods grazing and nesting. These sauropods are listed officially as Argentinosaurus, although there is some debate as to whether or not they were based visually on Camarasaurus. All is well in the world until out of the bushes pops a Parasaurolophus who is not quite right. He is green and he looks like he's melting, he's making these weird noises and he's running in circles. This man is sick. As megafauna, who really would have no natural predators at their maximum size, the sauropod really doesn't seem to care. Now, in the primal universe, there are mega dinosaurs that are highly variable from what we would see in our history, and there's also magic and curses and evil potions and things like that. So there are things that could threaten a sauropod. However, these sauropods are still megafauna, and so this dinosaur really doesn't seem all that concerned by this gross little Parasaurolophus around him. That changes, however, when the Parasaurolophus bites into the Argentinosaurus, in which case the sauropod kicks and kills the small infected dinosaur, which dies pretty much immediately. Almost as quickly as that Parasaurolophus dies, the sauropod begins to not feel so great. Our boy starts turning green, he has snot and mucus dripping out of his nose, his eyes are runny, and he is breathing very heavy. He's clearly feeling quite under the weather at this point and goes to take a big drink from the local pond, which goes very badly because I think every single organ in his body ended up back in that pond. At this point, a psychosis or frenzy takes over his brain and he goes on a rampage, and when he encounters other members of his herd while running around manically, he turns violent. He shows many of the same tendencies as the Parasaurolophus that infected him, including the tendency towards biting. However, the problem here is that a bite from a Parasaurolophus is not the same as a bite from a giant multi-ton sauropod, and instead of infecting the other members of his herd, he just wipes them off the senses completely. This is where the protagonists of the show end up encountering the mad sauropod, who gives chase in a completely unrelenting pursuit, and he seems pretty much unstoppable until finally he falls into a pit of lava and is killed. My favorite part about this episode, other than the sheer amount of horror that it made me feel, was speculating as to what exactly this infection could be. The eye color changes that occur once the Parasaurolophus dies and the sauropod is fully infected suggest that there could be some sort of curse or magical element to this infection, but I want to focus more on the biological components. So first, let's take a look at the symptoms. We see weeping from the eyes and nostrils. The skin color changes to a sickly sort of green color palette. We see increased thirst, vomiting of the blood and organs. We see extreme violence with a tendency towards biting. And we see the dinosaur able to commit feats that would be completely impossible for a fully grown Argentinosaurus. This thing can run and it can leap into the air, which could be helped by the fact that it seems all of its organs are gone. So obviously, thank God, this doesn't exactly mimic anything we see in our world today, but there are 3 things that it kind of seems familiar to: parasites, rabies, and CWD. let's start with parasites. There are a couple parasites in real life today that do change the behavior of their host. You can see this in a type of parasitic flatworm that infects snails. It forces them to climb to high visible areas and also changes their color to a bright, flashing green to attract birds. You might also recognize the name cordyceps, which is a parasitic fungus that forces ants to crawl to high exposed areas so the fungus can burst out of the ant or other insect and rain down spores on the rest of the population. However, generally parasites that want to attract a predator to continue the life cycle need to pick small prey animals, and that doesn't seem to really be the case for this infection. Nothing about the mad sauropod infection says, "Come eat me." If anything, the mad sauropod is gonna come eat you. So what about rabies? Well, it's pretty clear that anything infected with this disease is prone to biting. That is how the sauropod was infected, and it is the first thing it does when it encounters another sauropod. However, my main problem with the rabies theory is that rabies tends to cause hydrophobia, or the complete fear and inability to drink any water, especially in late-stage rabies. Given that the sauropod was super thirsty and was gulping down gallons and gallons of water right as its infection started to get bad, it doesn't seem that rabies would really be a main contender, even though biting is really important. So that brings us to the last category of infection that I feel like really fits, which is CWD, or chronic wasting disease. CWD is a prion disease, which essentially means that it causes proteins in the body to fold the wrong way. This is especially common in deer, but it's also seen pretty much in most ungulates. Mad cow disease is a prion disease very similar to CWD. There are a couple things that fit with the mad sauropod infection, but obviously nothing is perfect, like with the other theories. CWD does tend to result in animals that are covered in sores and scabs and lesions, although I don't think that that's directly correlated to the disease. It's just because the animal loses bodily function and starts getting hurt and infected. Some of the symptoms that do fit are drastic weight loss, which is called wasting, hence chronic wasting disease, and drooling, excessive thirst, lack of fear, although it will be noted that the lack of weight in deer with CWD is not caused by barfing up all their organs, and their lack of fear does not correlate with aggression. Generally, CWD contamination is sort of passive. The deer just get listless, they get confused, and eventually something kills them. They die or something kills them. And then their rotting corpse or their droppings spreads the prions into the water or grass to contaminate other animals. This is not what we see with the mad sauropod. That is definitely not passive. So nothing really fits, but of course, why would it? If it was just dinosaur rabies, then it would just be dinosaur rabies. It wouldn't be this neat, potentially mystical, sort of horrifying infection that it is. That's gonna be all for today because quite frankly, I don't want to look at this thing anymore, but if you have any suggestions for future fictional dinosaurs, make sure to let me know. Also, what do you think the mad sauropod infection is? Do you agree with my ideas or do you disagree? Let me know. And just remember, this thing is fictional, which is all the more reason to smile.